So, Brittany, quick question. Did you ever as a kid say, when I grow up, I want to manage tacit knowledge?
Of course I did. It was veterinarian, oceanographer. I was obsessed with Jacques Cousteau, uh, dinosaur wrangler, and then knowledge manager. Of course, it was on the list. It was
Dinosaurs.
always on the list.
Same, really. My guidance counselor suggested law, culinary school, something more traditional, like going to music school in the middle of nowhere, Maine. And
Oh, why
somehow
wouldn't you do
I ended
that?
up explaining acronyms in meetings, building communities of practice, and somehow managing to explain frameworks of systems for a living.
Isn't it so funny how a lot of us in this field just kind of, I know that we're going to get more into this, but it really honestly feels like knowledge management is the career equivalent of like you find a secret passage in Clue. You don't plan it, it just happens, and then suddenly you're in the library with the candlestick, except the candlestick is like a maturity model, and you have to walk a room through full of people through how to use the maturity model. Like, how did this happen?
No idea. Play the intro.
What's the point of another KN podcast? Well, I tell you, we've got every kind of point, like power and share, laser and name, bullet and prize, focus and pain, power
KN stands for knowledge management, by the way.
laser and name, bullet and prize, focus and pain. Not another KN podcast. Not an FM or AM podcast. Not another KN podcast. Not just any other KN podcast.
Welcome back to Not Another KM podcast. I'm Brittany.
And I'm Rachel. And today we're flipping the script and we are going full on into superhero mode. It's our KM origin stories. Spoiler, nobody dreams of being in KM as a kid.
You didn't grow up like going to career day and telling your classmates that you really love knowledge management? You didn't do that?
Shocker. No. But I think these stories of how people found or stumbled their way into KM careers are super interesting. So today, Brittany and I are actually going to interview each other and talk about how we got into KM in the first place.
I am actually really excited about this because, Rachel, I know that a lot of people listening know who both of us are, but I know that you are a little bit more visible on the knowledge management conference circuit than I am. So I think a lot of people know you already as kind of this TEDx speaker. They've seen you speak a lot. They know that you're a consultant, but I'm sure not a lot of people know how you got here. So I'm actually like really excited that I get to interview you and do this. So to dive in, did you choose KM or did KM choose you?
KM chose me. So I started out kind of on this untraditional path. Right out of high school, I planned to go the traditional college route. I was supposed to go to Berklee College of Music in Boston right out of high school. Derailed that right out of the gate. I did a year of AmeriCorps right out of high school, did City Year in New Hampshire. And from there, it took me 10 years to get my bachelor's. And actually, it ended up being in education because I took that untraditional path. Been a perpetual adult learner ever since. So I don't regret the route. Well, I don't regret to how I got to where I am today. But I took I just took a harder path, I guess. Right? Like I've always. My mom said that I marched the beat of a different accordion is how she phrased it. So I've always gone my own
Not an
path, no matter.
accordion.
Yeah, not the accordion. No, but I've always gone a different path. So for a myriad of reasons, I didn't get to go right away. But I've always worked in education in some capacity, whether I was working after school programs, summer camps, doing that kind of thing. So training and facilitation as a core foundation has always been there, which if you know KM, a lot of folks who fall into KM eventually are in the L&D training and facilitation wheelhouse to start. Now, it's just a kind of a adjacent path you kind of twist and turn and fall into. So my roles have always been helping people whether it's, one capacity or another. So, you know, several years into that, I was working at a nonprofit and I had an opportunity to kind of pivot into the higher education space and start working in the admissions world. So I took a leap of faith. That was 2015, left the nonprofit space, moved into higher education, started doing admissions, and it was a small school. And I started doing more like while I was doing admissions, I was doing some of the training pieces that went along with that while I was in the last bit of my bachelor's degree. And while I was doing that, the director of the school said that because I was so close to my bachelor's in education, if I pivoted away from classroom teaching for my degree and pivoted more to the administrative side, I could become a director of education for the school. And I was like, big leap, but I could do it. Like, why not? That seems like a great idea. So I did. And within a few months of that, huge change happened at the school and experienced my first real bout of change management that went poorly. It was like people from the corporate office several states away were playing chess, and I just happened to be one of the people that they were playing chess with, one of the pawns. And even though I changed my degree, I changed everything. A massive layoff occurred. I still had my job, but my career path was suddenly like shattered, and I was just in admissions, which, I was still successful, but I started to look at other opportunities to get out of where I was. So I finished my bachelor's. It was educational studies, transitioned to a different higher education university to work at, and started still working in the admission space, but still kind of loved that training and development path. Kept going down that route and was able to then pursue my master's, did that in management and leadership. So I got my master's science management and leadership, and which was a business school, a business degree after my bachelor's in education. Worked that route, and then meanwhile was working different jobs. Stayed there for about 5 years. Within that, experienced another big bout of change. Again, not great change, because the common denominator is change is hard. But the folks who were leading the change weren't great change managers. So that's now twice that I had some really, really terrible change happen to me as opposed to happen with me. So I took, at that point, what I called my, from the university, I lovingly referred to it as my gap year, because that really kind of gave me the opportunity to figure out what I wanted to do. And that was when my first real KM job happened without me knowing it was KM. I fell into that.
Mm.
So I started doing consulting where I was a document person. I was put on a payroll team. I know nothing about payroll, but I do know how to document things. And I sat with folks on the payroll team there and I started documenting what they did and having conversations like, tell me what you're doing and why are you doing it this way? And they thought I knew payroll inside and out. So they thought I was quizzing them. And I was like, no, like literally teach me like I know nothing. And they're like, okay. So because I was able to level with them and like communicate with them, they thought I was just being kind and nice when really I had no idea what I was doing. And I was able to do the documenting and like write everything down and get everything going from there. I was able to help streamline their process, give them documentation and job aids that they needed, and then help bring their entire payroll process that was taking close to 38 hours, where it really shouldn't have been taking 38 hours, down to a 12-hour process, which was incredible for them to have that, because I was able to go through, clean it up, and get it going with a counterpart who actually knew what payroll was supposed to happen. So I was just doing the document and cleaning for them, not understanding what I was doing was KM, didn't know the words. A position opened up on a KM team disguised as training back at the university. I applied for it, I got it, and that was my first official KM job. They disguised it as training. Well, they disguised it as KM, a training role disguised as KM because, training was a bad word at the time, red tape and all that. So they hired me as a trainer, brought me in, and then I was formally trained through a KMI course, became a certified knowledge manager. John Hovel, who will be a guest later on in a different podcast episode, came in and trained my team. And that was my first introduction and formally launched my KM journey in 2020. So that's kind of where I fell. In that time, I also got my doctorate in global training and development. So again, heavily education based, but always rooted in people, always rooted in documentation kind of process, but always people and change and wanting to help. So I feel like that was kind of like a long story as to how it happened, but yeah.
I think, but I think, and thank you for taking us through that because I think everyone has their own story. And so I think it's really interesting when we get to hear about exactly how people ended up the way they are. I like how you just kind of casually threw in, and then I got my doctorate,
Oh, yeah.
like after all of that, because that was a really big deal, right? Um,
Yeah. It was somewhere I mean, it
and
was in there, like, I think I finished it in 22, but I started it, I think, in, like, 19. I started it in 19, finished it in 22. So, like, while I was doing that consulting gig and then coming back in and doing KM, like, I finished it there, and actually my dissertation was on KM at an unnamed university and figuring out where critical tacit knowledge was living. So I was able to actually pull in training and development and KM and tie it together. So not to interrupt you, but yeah.
cool. No, it's fine. And so I think and I mean, so my story is a little bit different.
Yeah, I'd love to
It
hear that.
didn't, I wasn't in the education space at all. Ever since I was a kid, I was kind of like, I want to save the world. I wanted to be
Yeah.
the first woman president of the United States. Really glad I didn't go that route considering,
Yeah.
what's evolved, but like that was, ever since I was younger, I just remember I wanted to like make a difference. And so I have a bachelor's in political science, and I got my master's in peace building, which I know makes me sound like a professional hippie, but it's like conflict resolution, right? It's this how does because we invest so much money in war and in conflict, but if you invest in peace, how much more that ROI is, right? And so just kind
Right.
of the study of that and the history of that. And I've always, even in high school, your first jobs and things like that, it was always in office environments where I was filing things, I was managing records. I worked at an eye doctor's office in high school, where you have to keep things organized, and it was about managing information and things. And so I've always kind of had jobs where that curation and organization element was there. 2012, I was working at a women and peace building think tank in Washington, D.C. after grad school. And one of the things that this think tank offered as a service to foreign governments was thought leadership. So there was a UN resolution 1325 that's about women in peace building. And so all UN member states have to involve women in their peace building, in their foreign policy. And so we kind of used that and said, okay, so we have the knowledge and the tools to help you do that. You can hire us to review things that you're working on, to build capacity of your teams. Like, it was part of our thought leadership, was part of our offering that governments could hire us for. To
Right.
do that, you need to capture what you know. You need to be able to sell, and you need to be able to tell that story in a way that people will go, oh, I will choose this think tank in DC over any of the other numerous consultancies and Deloittes of the world, right?
Sure.
We love Deloitte, nothing against Deloitte. But how do you position yourself? How do you tell that story? And so I started and part of that was I was in charge of managing, we had an externally facing, like a portal, like an information portal where all of our knowledge products and all of those things lived. And I was like, we could do a lot better. Like, this is kind of telling the story, but there was something missing, right? And so I realized, it was like, okay, it's not monitoring and evaluation, because M&E is a lot of like, we did this and therefore blah blah. Like, it was not necessarily that. It involved research, but it wasn't all about research. And so I kind of started doing this job that was, when people would come back from trips, I would sit down with them and say, okay, let's debrief, but don't just tell me what you did. What did you expect to happen? Basically an after action review without knowing what an after action review was at the time, right? Just kind of like, what were we supposed to be doing? What actually happened? What was that difference? And then tell me about what you learned, right? And so capturing when people would come back from missions and things, going, okay, here's what happened. Here's what we learned from it. And how do we tell that story? And then how do I put it on this portal so people can know about it? And so
Mm.
it was kind of a completion of a process that just wasn't happening before. And I was like, what is this? Like, what is this that I'm doing? Because it's not this and it's not this and it's not IT, right? It's something very specific. And I literally started to Google things that I was doing, as all good stories start off with, right? Just like having a Google about what are things that you're doing. And the definition of knowledge management popped up. And I was like, oh,
Cool.
there's a word. There's a word for this that I'm doing. And it was it was this aha moment. It was this light bulb moment, and I never turned back. And in fact, I went at the time, my title was like program associate. And I went into my boss's office and I was like, look, you don't have to pay me more. It would be great if you could pay me more, but like, you don't have to pay me more, but I need you to change my title. I am a knowledge management associate. I'm not a program associate. And I think that having that on my resume set me up for the direction that I eventually took, right? So it was making it a lot more clear and refined about what I was doing, not just like my role on the team, but also for me as a professional to be like, oh, this is actually a discipline. This thing that I'm doing that I feel like I'm pulling from here, I'm pulling from here, I'm pulling from here is actually a specific thing. And I can lean into that. And I wanted to lean into that because I was good at it. And I was interested in it. I think it was the thing for me is that solving problems, like my brain, that's how my brain works. I really like to have, somebody comes to you with like a problem and you want to solve it. And knowledge management was just something that helped me solve complex problems, which my whole career has been in the nonprofit NGO space, the international like development space. And they need to solve complicated problems very fast. And knowledge management has been a way that I can contribute to saving the world like I wanted to do when I was 7 years old, right? And so after working at this think tank for a couple of years, I lost my job. So 2016, I was unemployed. And I had a lot of time I basically was unemployed for 6 months and I had a lot of time to think about what do I want to do? How do I want to equip myself for like what's going to happen next? Is this still something? Do I want to go back into advocacy work? Do I want to, lean more into the political science part of my degree? Or do I really want to be this technical expert now that I'd gotten a taste of knowledge management, right? Like, or do I really want to lean into that part of my experience? And I wanted to lean into that. I started working with World Vision International in 2017 as a knowledge management advisor and then was promoted to a knowledge management manager a couple years later. And so really working with the knowledge management focal points at World Vision that does, it's the largest international development organization focused on children and children's rights. And it was a huge learning opportunity for me and also to learn from other very talented KMers who worked at World Vision alongside me, all of us focal points, right? Really helped me kind of hone myself as a knowledge management professional. You're obviously there to do a job, but also being surrounded by people who are so good at what they do and so talented, you're like, oh, I need to raise my game. Like, how do I become a better, professional so that I can do my job better and we can achieve the change that we want to achieve, right? Um, so I started working with World Vision in 2017. I got certified in knowledge management in 2018, also with John Hubble. So we love John. And I think that also helped me because up until that point, my knowledge management experience was on the job. I was just doing it because it needed to be done. And that certified knowledge manager, that certification helped to have the theory behind all of this. So I had a little
Yeah,
bit more, I had more tools, like you get more tools, you get more.
sure.
It's not necessarily about the semantics, but it's like you have the tools, you have the theory, you're able to walk people through that part of it a little bit more than just, sure, I can do that. It positions you to be able to be more of a thought leader and to be able to walk people through the theory behind that stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and so then um, I started working for the UN for the World Food Program in 2023 as a consultant. And I think the move from being a staff, KM as staff to KM, at least in my experience, KM as a consultant really helped me use that part of my brain in a very different way because as a consultant, it's like you're the expert, do the
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And working for the UN for the first time and the World Food Program is a humanitarian organization that moves very, very fast, like life-saving, supply chain delivery, like every moment counts. So
Yeah.
if there's any inefficiencies and if there's anything that's in silos, like it really breaks things down. And so it was a very rewarding job that I had. And also to see, because sometimes in knowledge management, you don't always get to see the results of what you're doing, right?
Right.
If you're
Right.
doing your job well, you know this, we've talked about this. If you're doing your job well, usually people don't notice it. Everything just kind of
Exactly. Yeah.
works, you know? Um, And so I had the opportunity, I was hired as a knowledge management, again, in an advising role, and then I had the opportunity to step into more of a leadership role as the chief of the knowledge management unit. And that's, in addition to doing the work, to be able to lead a really talented team and to not just do the work yourself, but to bring others on that knowledge management journey with you, it was a very rewarding experience. And so I think as I look through my, kind of, I don't want to say unorthodox, but kind of how I encountered knowledge management and then how it just kind of became my life. And especially in the sector, because we work in very different sectors, the sector that I worked in, it was it was something where I was able to really see how knowledge management wasn't just something like, oh yeah, it's a thing that we do when we have time, but to be able to say, no, that this is something that's really strategic. And if
Yeah.
your people
Yeah.
can learn from things quickly and do things better in the future, we can get people food, 1 week sooner than we could before, or we can make
Sure.
sure that this delivery happens, sooner than we could. And I think that especially in that space, it's super important. That's my that's my journey. And I
Yeah.
think I'm hoping that what people take away from this, because I don't know about you, I've had a lot of people come up to me at conferences and say, like, do I have to get certified? Do I have to get a degree in knowledge management, right? To do
Where do I
knowledge
go?
management. I hope that exactly. And
Yeah.
there's tons of good programs, and I'm not knocking any of those programs. And if you're interested in doing that, you absolutely should. However, if you take anything away from mine and Rachel's experience, is that that can be part of it, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
You can do knowledge management in any sector at any time. And so I think that's, when we talk about origin stories, like I hope that that's something that people take away from this as well.
Yeah, I think I've only met one person I mean, aside from folks who've, like, gone to school to be librarians, because
Hmm.
those folks are just a different type of person anyway, right? I love librarians, but those folks have been intentional about their library journey for the most part anyway. But I think I've only ever met one person who has intentionally become a knowledge manager from the get, like, one person. Um Like, no, I actually wanted to be a knowledge manager, like, as their first career. A one.
Oh, we need to find them and we need to interview them.
And it was a complete accident because I was like, "I've never met a person who has ever done this," and they're like, "Actually, I have." And it was me, and I was like, my mind was like, it was crazy. But genuinely, people fall into it, and that's one thing that I love about our field because we have so many people from so many different walks of life. I mean, and you and I have developed this really amazing friendship, but also like working colleagueship. Is that a word? I just made it up. But this
It
this
is now.
working relationship, right? Like where we could not be more different professionally, but we are often sharing stories, but often asking advice. And it's, how would you approach this situation?
Hmm.
Because KM is such a interchangeable skill set where we can approach problems from different angles and different perspectives. And that's one of my biggest platforms is perspectives, looking at things from different angles anyway, just trying to talk about seeing things from just a different way. And that's where KM is such a gift because you're able to kind of just meet people from all over the place and have a common language, even if it's not always the same problems that you experience. So that's what I love about us. Well, not just you and I, but like us as a KM discipline.
Yes.
So yeah, cool. Like, what was your big aha moment when it came to realizing KM wasn't just filing cabinets with like, boring stuff?
I think
What was your biggest aha moment?
I think it was because sometimes I think as knowledge managers, we spend a lot of time trying to convince people about why knowledge management matters and how it's different from other functions, right? I think for me, the moment where I saw my boss, um, like
Yeah.
because I was able to explain, so it was a former boss of mine, and I was able to kind of explain and walk through like knowledge management helps to solve problems. It helps to make connections. It helps to, so if you learn something from one field office, you're able to apply that, the next time you don't reduplicate things. And I could see when I saw the moment that it completed in his brain, And he goes, "Oh, so this thing that I did in Ethiopia, and then people didn't share it, and then we had to do it again when we did the similar thing in this country." When I saw it click, and then I watched him speak to his senior level peers, and speak their language at that level, to be able to talk about why knowledge management was important and was worth investing in. That was a moment for me where it was like, this is something that people, it's not just something I care about. It's not just something I'm pushing because it's my job. It's something that people realize can help them do their jobs better. That they
Yeah.
and that actually problems that they've had in the past, they didn't even know it was a knowledge management problem, and now they do. And you can see
Yeah.
it kind of click in people's heads going, "Oh, that's what that was?" Just that was a knowledge management thing. I thought it was just because we couldn't find anybody, right? And
Sure.
so when I see, that's like one of my favorite things. And not just because I'm like proving to somebody like, "Hey, what I do matters." It's this moment where I have communicated and somebody has been like, not just I get it, but also I can do that. And I
Yeah.
think that that moment for me, it wasn't just, oh, we document things and then we share them and we do webinars and we do all this nice stuff. It was, I saw on someone's face, all this time, we could have been doing something differently. Now I know what this is. Let's do it differently. And I
Yeah.
think that was the moment for me.
Yeah. For sure.
What about you?
Uh, I think that, anytime that I can get somebody to stop reinventing the wheel or stop, the Groundhog Day reinventions is huge. But the common conversations that I have with people, even if it's just like friends at dinner, where I can't, like, I'm such a nerd. Okay, I'm nerd here. But just helping streamline a silly little process. Like when I have a conversation where I'm like, oh, knowledge management, blah, blah, blah. And they look at me like I have six heads. And I'm like, okay, when you go out and get your mail, and you come inside and you put your mail down and you put your keys down, you probably put them in the same place, right? And they're like, "Well, yeah." And I was like, "Okay." And then what happens? They're like, "Well, then I pick it up and I put my bills in this pile in my, regular mail in the trash or whatever, right?" Like, "Okay, so that's a full process." And then what happens? I'm like, "Well, then I do this." And I was like, "Okay, so that's KM." And they're like, "What?" So when I'm able to explain that, as basic as that, and then I'm able to help them just straighten that out, and I'm able to, like, relate it to something so simple, and I can help them streamline up that. Like, I've got a couple of spreadsheets that I use, even personally, that have made my life a heck of a lot easier. One is just, like, a shared password spreadsheet that my wife and I use, and, now that I've said this, please don't hack my email. But no, it's like it's a spread, but a basic spreadsheet, that we use to, like, shared phone numbers of important things that we're able to, like, go back and forth of, like, kids' doctors and things like that, right? Uh, that has made a world of difference for, us. And if I can share that stuff with other friends, those aha moments are just super, super easy, and they're like, "Wow, how come I didn't think of this?" And I'm like, "It's just
Yeah.
it's common sense to me." That has made a world of difference to my friends, and if I can just, preach those little things that have been super easy for me and they start implementing it, they're like, "Wow, I started doing that and it's made my life so much easier." Like, those things, when I see that flip for them, it's so silly, but it's so simple, and it's, some of the smallest things that just make the difference. I like seeing that go into action.
I am not a parent, but I cannot even imagine the knowledge management, the personal knowledge management that goes into, like what you were saying, keeping everything organized and all of that type of stuff. Like I am in awe of, that's a whole other level of knowledge management, being a parent and keeping that organized.
Yeah, not even parent stuff though, but, like, you think about it too in even a shared household of, like,
Hmm.
okay, where's the landlord's phone number? Like, where does the rent
Hmm.
check get sent every month? Like, or if you're a homeowner, like, who do we use to get our propane? Or, like, where do we order the wood from? Like, that kind of stuff. I mean, it is the personal knowledge management piece, but it's not just, I mean, it's huge for parents for sure, but anybody who's partnered, or even if you're not, going through and having the list of numbers to call if something were to happen to you, right? That's an episode for a completely different day, but I could go on my soapbox about that, but I will spare you all those details today.
That'll be a future episode.
Yes, yeah.
I'm really curious. Something I want to know because I've struggled with this, and I'm sure you've struggled with this as well. We've kind of talked about it already. How do you explain what knowledge management is at parties or like happy hours or social gatherings? The whole like, because, I lived in DC for a while and
Sure.
everyone's go to question is, what do you do? You know? So, what do you do? How do you explain what knowledge management is at parties without putting people to sleep? Because I know how I do it, but I want to know how you've done it.
I'm gonna be honest, I've struggled with this for so long because I've tripped over it, like, I've gone the succession planning route, I've gone the, personal knowledge route. The most recent one, the most recent definition, because 'cause I'm still workshopping this, is, I help organizations stop losing their collective brain every time somebody leaves or goes on vacation, right? I'm part librarian, part therapist, part digital janitor, and I basically make sure people can find what they need, they can trust what they have, and actually use the information to do their jobs better. And that's what I'm sticking with for now. It's going to change the next time I say it. It'll probably change again after that. Yours has to be better than mine. So what do you got?
I think so for me, I mean, first it depends, right? I have to gauge how
Oh,
interested they
yeah,
are
there's
and if
that.
they actually are interested. What I've done before is I talk about there's a difference between like a dump truck and plumbing. And what I
Oh,
mean
for
by
sure.
that is especially in the humanitarian space, in the international development space, everyone is just like, just give me more data. If we had more data, we can make better decisions. If we had more data, we could, do this faster and go there faster. And that's just like a dump truck that just dumps data in your lap and it doesn't tell you what it's for and it doesn't tell you where it goes and it doesn't tell you how to prioritize and it doesn't tell you any of that stuff. What knowledge management is plumbing and it gets water, like it gets helps things flow to where they need it to be at the moment that you need it to be there. So when you go to wash your hands, the water is there. So what I do as a knowledge manager is I put the systems in place that help things flow to where they need to. And then usually the takeaway people have is, so you're a plumber? And I just have to be like, yes, yes, I'm a plumber. Fine. If that's what gets you to grasp this conversation, then yes, you're fine. So
Dude,
that
yeah.
usually that helps. That helps, I found.
Yeah, yeah. I will say the most surprising place, and actually you were with me for this one, was when we were at the tattoo shop in Dublin.
Mhm.
We were at the Knowledge Summit in Dublin this past summer, and we were getting we get so every time we speak at a conference, we get knowledge management, knowledge key tattoos. It's just a thing that we've been doing. Are the KM ladies that you know who you are, but we get our knowledge management tattoos because we're knowledge nerds. But best the best reaction that we've ever gotten, and I will admit my bias here, was the nice young woman who was checking us into the tattoo. Was like, what are you doing here?" And we're like, "Oh, we're here for a conference." And she goes, "Oh, well, what kind of conference?" And I was like, "Oh, well, knowledge management." And I wasn't expecting much. It had been a long day. We had both presented. We had just hustled to the other side of Dublin to be on time for this tattoo appointment that we were running late for, and we made it. And then this young girl who checked us in was like, "Oh, knowledge management. That's similar to blah 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 blah," blah," and she rattled it off beautifully, better than we could have expected it. And it was probably the most surprising, most accurate explanation I have ever gotten from a stranger. And it was probably the most unexpected place that could have happened. That was
I
amazing.
remember this and I remember us being like, "Do you wanna come back with us? Like, there's
"Do
another
you wanna go
there's
out?"
day 2 is tomorrow. Do you wanna"
Yeah. And she's like, "Oh, no, I gotta work." But man, that was
We're like,
incredible.
"Oh, man."
Yeah.
That was great. So,
Yeah.
along the same line, what is the funniest reaction that you've
Oh, the
gotten?
funniest
Because
reaction.
the funniest reaction, explaining it is one thing, but what's the funniest reaction you've gotten from people when you say that you work in KM?
I don't know. Most people just kinda, like, look at me and they're like, "KM, that's like IT, right?" And I'm like, I mean, sometimes, but, like, I don't really I might sit in IT, but I you don't want me fixing anything computer related." And then that's when I realized we're not gonna be friends at this party or at all, really. So, that's probably the most
I think for
standard
me
and yeah. What about you?
Beyond just the eyes glazing over and kind of backing away slowly towards the door, right? I think the funniest one for me is I think people legitimately thought I was a spy. I remember, and maybe it was a DC thing because who knows, right? But I just remember it was this woman and she thought about it. She was like knowledge management, and she thought about it, and she like leaned in and she goes, "Do you work for the CIA?" And I was like, "No." But of course, you can't tell people. Even if I was a spy, I couldn't tell her that I was a spy, right? So I don't think she really believed me. It was hilarious. I didn't know how to
That's
get out of
awesome.
that conversation either. I was just like, "Yeah, so knowledge management. Have a nice night." Just like,
You should have just
and
leaned in harder on that one.
like, yes, I worked for the CIA, like super secret spy ops with knowledge. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's the most memorable one that I've gotten, and I think
that's
there are I
fantastic.
mean, members of my extended family also probably think I'm a spy as well. Like, trying to describe what Brittany does, I think it's just like she does things with a computer and she enjoys it, so we're happy for
Right?
her, right? I think it's just they just kind of accept it for what it is.
That's awesome. So I'm sure that, all of us who work in KM have buzzwords that we love to hate. So what's the
Mm.
first buzzword you want to roast?
Best practice, but let
Uh,
me explain. I love and it's not for the reasons that you think. I Best practice is a very specific thing, right? Like there's industry definitions for what constitutes a best practice. What I want to roast is the fact that people use it interchangeably, right? So we're like good practice, best practice, emerging practice, as if they're all the same thing. So when we talk about capturing best practices or capturing good practices, no one knows what we're talking about. And it's like, this is a hill that I will die on. That if you capture something, you make an observation, right? Something worked and you made an observation. That's great. That's an emerging practice. It's something that could become best practice, but it's not there. You just observed it once. If that is
yeah.
repeatable in a very specific context, then it's a good practice because it's something that you've repeated, but it's in
Mhm.
one context. If something can be repeated in many different types of contexts over and over a period of time, then it is a best practice, right? But I think when people start to get excited about knowledge management, they're not really familiar with what it is, but they know these kind of communities of practice, best practice, and we use these things and just kind of spew them out, and it doesn't mean anything. And so that's sorry, I'll get off that soapbox now. That's what I It's one of those things that I'm just like, it's a very specific thing and we need to talk about it.
Yep.
So this is why
Yep.
people don't like me.
No,
This
stop
is
it.
why I'm this is why I'm a pain at work. But what about you?
On that same vein, learnings. Learnings is one of those, and it's not
Ah,
because of learnings not being good, but it's pretty abstract, right? It abstracts your responsibility. Who learned it? What
mm,
changed? Right? Like,
mhm,
I'm not saying you
mhm.
can't have learnings, but maybe talk about what we learned and who learned and what changed from, like, what are the outcomes? It's just so vague. And alignment is one of those as well, because, like, you typically use alignment when no one agrees, but you just wanna end a meeting, right? You can have
Yeah.
alignment, but, it's let's use alignment appropriately. So, yeah.
What are your feelings about a single source of truth?
That's a Pandora's box. Do we really wanna get into that right now?
We dedicate a future episode to that.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that lots of future episodes coming from this.
exactly. If you're listening to us and you have opinions on the phrase single source of truth, please let us know, right? Email us. Tell us what your thoughts are because we will probably do a whole episode about it in the future. But all right. So we've shared our journeys. We've talked about how we don't make friends when we talk about what we do at bars. But after years of doing this, you have over a decade of experience. I have over a decade of experience in this. Like, why did you stick with it? Why did you stick around in knowledge management?
I said that at the very beginning of this that I've been in some form of training, education, helping people nonprofit work since the beginning, right? Whether it was summer camps, whether it was classrooms. And I still see KM as a playground to help people. So I'm in it for the messy, human, transformative side, right? KM is still very human. Even with AI coming in, you still need the human side. You still need that human touch, and you need to have that with there's change management. There's all of those pieces that come through, and I want to be able to support the human. Um, and I love that aspect of KM. So I stick around because I want to support everybody through it.
Here it's solving problems. I think I truly believe that the answers to some of the world's like most difficult problems are already out there, but they are just in silos. They are in someone's SharePoint. They are in someone's team that if they were to talk to each other, if they were to exchange learnings, if they were to be a part of a community of practice or whatever it is, that they would be able to share that knowledge and be able to make that change, right? And I
Yeah.
think that knowledge management and the ability for knowledge management to make those types of connections happen, and not only to make them happen, but to make them happen consistently,
Yeah.
um, is huge and is very rewarding and is a reason why, yeah, it's a reason why I continue to do what I do and put up with the eyes glazing over when I try to describe it to people because it's worth it, right? Like I think at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I think it's we all want to make a difference in the world, and if this is how, if my nerdiness can help make a difference in the world, then like I'm going to do it. So,
Heck yeah. So
so now you know how we got here. We didn't go to school for this, and like we said earlier, hopefully your takeaway from this is that the journey to being a knowledge management person, if that's something that you want to do, it's not linear most of the time.
yeah.
You can be a knowledge manager right where you are. So I think now it's your turn.
Yeah. So if you're a current KM practitioner, what's your story? Did you stumble into it? Did you get voluntold, or did you wake up one day realizing that you were the knowledge person because you owned the SharePoint password?
Please email us and tell us. We'd love to hear it. We know we're not alone in this, but please email us NAKMPOD, that's NAKMpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
So until next time, may your taxonomies be tidy or your acronyms be merciful. See you.
Merciful acronyms.
This episode of Not Another KM Podcast was edited by me, Rachel Teague. It was produced by Rachel Teague and Brittany Persinger. Our fantastic theme music was created by Chase Tremaine Music. Questions, comments, quips, quotes, or conundrums? Reach out to us at nakmpod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support.